What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Episode 5 of House of the Dragon, an episode directed by Claire Kilner and written by Charmaine Degrat, or Degrate. I'm not quite sure how they pronounce their last name. And it was a pretty massive episode, which condensed a lot of key events from the book Fire and Blood into the big wedding feast at the end of the episode. And there were a few little kind of minor departures from the text, but I feel like they work in the context of this show and how the characters have been portrayed so far. But I'll get to those details in a moment. But first and foremost, if you have not yet seen the episode, obviously I'm going to be going into spoilers, so go check it out. And you should probably go ahead and check out the teaser for next week's episode as well, because it teased a massive time jump. And this is a massive time jump where a lot of the key actors are going to be replaced. And we saw that already this episode with some of the kids of the Velaryons. But sadly, this week was Millie Alcock's final episode. And I think she's just absolutely nailed the character of Rhaenyra every step of the way. If anything, she might have given us the best performance of any character of the first 5 episodes. And all I'll say is that, for my part, as much as I love this show and as much as I love how well they've adhered to the book so far, it's a big ask, or I guess it's a big demand to place on an audience to make them kind of emotionally reset and then get reinvested in the same character but played by a different actress further down the road. I mean, I think it's about roughly a 20-year time jump. The Dance of the Dragons takes place between 129 AC and 131 AC. And as we saw in the teaser, Viserys is looking rough. I mean, the disease he's suffering from ain't getting any better. But sadly, also that means that we will be losing Emily Carey, who's done a great job as Alicent. She'll be replaced by Olivia Cook. And Millie Alcock will be replaced by Emma Darcy, or Darcy. Once again, I'm not quite sure how she pronounces her last name. And I guess my preference would have been to basically just through hair or wrinkles or whatever, just age the actors up. But for whatever reason, the show decided to go this route. So I wish the best of luck to the 2 actresses that are coming in, because they have a very tough act to follow. Once again, Millie Alcock, I feel like she has been a true Targaryen. She's absolutely crushed the role every step of the way. So high five to Millie, and we wish you the best of luck in all your future endeavors. But the episode begins with a scene that's quite a departure from the book, where we see Daemon confronting his wife, Rhea Royce. She's out hunting, and clearly she's someone who can handle herself. She likes to ride, she likes to hunt. And Daemon doesn't really do anything that threatening, but he keeps approaching a horse, and I didn't quite see what he did, but the horse gets spooked and throws her. She lands on her back. She's paralyzed. She starts talking some shit about how he was never able to consummate their marriage, and then he ends up killing her with a rock. In the book, she was just thrown from a horse, but it is an interesting twist that they would have Daemon be there playing a role. And also, all this stuff about his impotence, that's all been introduced in the show as well. And I think that's all going to be as a way of kind of, I guess, leading up to the inevitable payoff when he proves himself not to be impotent. But what it means is that Daemon is no longer unavoidably attached to his bronze bitch, as he liked to describe her, which gives him the opportunity to stir the pot and create a little more mischief toward the end of the episode. And then the episode gave us a little politics with the arranging of the marriage between Rhaenyra and Laenor, and we see how Viserys is just getting worse and worse. He's sick as a dog on the voyage over to High Tide and Driftmark, but obviously his illness is much worse than just being seasick. I mean, as we later see in the episode, his entire arm is just super funky. And in the book, Viserys didn't suffer from that. He suffered from a love of strong drink and big meals, and he had a little trouble with breathing, and he had a lot of chest pains whenever he was walking up and down stairs. And he did have an incident where he cut his hand on the Iron Throne and lost 2 fingers as the wound got infected. But yeah, this is one of those changes where I was like, God damn, like, did y'all really have to make his illness that fucking gross? But I guess the answer is yes, they did. But we see over in Driftmark that some of the characters have aged up, like Laena. We saw her a few episodes back when she was just 12. Now she's a beautiful young woman. And we see that Lionel Strong is doing a pretty good job as the new Hand of the King. And everybody is kind of watching Viserys. Like, Rhaenys notices that Viserys is wearing gloves, and he's obviously weak, he's frail. But that does not stop the Sea Snake from doing a little haggling or some hard bargaining. He wants some clarity on succession, and he wants some clarity on last names before he agrees to a wedding. And what he wants to be ensured is the idea that the children of Laenor and Rhaenyra will actually ascend the Iron Throne, but where he's willing to give, if and when the children of Laenor and Rhaenyra ascend the Iron Throne, at that point they would have to change their last name to Targaryen. But the big revelation on Driftmark is that Laenor is not necessarily a ladies' man, and this is kind of an open secret, and Rhaenys is concerned. I mean, she knows that Rhaenyra's claim is going to be challenged, and the Sea Snake's kind of not really taking the issue as seriously as perhaps he should. He is so in love with his wife, and he's so into women, he just can't understand how his son would not be the same. But as it turns out, Laenor is very much in love with a character named Joffrey, a.k.a. the Knight of Kisses, and he has a very frank conversation with Rhaenyra. And she talks about how she prefers roast duck to goose, but that he can live his life, she can live her life, and that they will do their duties for the realm, but then that they can both dine as they see fit. And this was an interesting twist or play on words that was borrowed from the book, but under different circumstances. Grand Maester Maelys, very famously in the book, when discussing the preferences of Laenor, says, "What of it? I don't like the taste of fish, but when fish is served, I eat it." And he's just yet another one of those people who thinks that when it comes to doing your duty for the realm, you just step up and do it. But Rhaenyra and Laenor, they've known each other all their lives. So at a minimum, they've got a pretty good understanding between the two of them about how they will comport themselves moving forward. But I imagine there'll be a little bit of conversation over the next couple days about this strange contradiction in the Sea Snake, where he seems to be very broad-minded about a woman taking the Iron Throne, but on the other hand, a little closed-minded when it comes to his son's preferences. But as any fan of literature or drama will tell you, characters are more interesting because of their contradictions. But one of the major plot lines of this episode is the rupture, the schism in the relationship between Sir Criston Cole and Rhaenyra. When they're on the voyage back home to King's Landing, he asks her to run away with him and basically have a marriage for love as opposed to a marriage for politics. And his expression was just so pitiful. And we see how it's like, how his breaking of his vow of chastity is just absolutely killing him. But this is the beginning of these two characters absolutely going their separate ways in the political conflict to come. And he almost seems relieved when he's summoned to meet with Alicent upon returning to King's Landing. And she, in a very roundabout way, is trying to get at the accusation of what might have happened that led to the Grand Maester bringing the cup of tea to Rhaenyra. Because while everybody was away, the very sly and very clever character Larys Clubfoot was speaking to Alicent in his own roundabout way about the tea that was brought to Rhaenyra. And for people who don't know who Larys Clubfoot is, he is the son of Lionel Strong, the new Hand of the King. Clubfoot's also the brother of Harwin Strong, a.k.a. Breakbones, who we see in action in the latter part of the episode. But keep an eye on Clubfoot. He's going to be a very important kind of plotter and schemer moving forward in this overall drama. In any event, getting back to Cole and Alicent, he almost seems relieved to be able to make his full confession, and his only request is that she put him to death instead of subjecting him to being gelded and tortured. Or, I mean, yeah, if I had the choice between being castrated and mutilated or killed, yes, give me death. But at a minimum, maybe he should have requested to go to the wall instead, but clearly all of his choices are weighing heavily upon him. But finally, we get this giant epic affair where the Velaryons come over with all their ships and all their dragons in anticipation of the upcoming royal wedding. And this wedding, it unfolded slowly, but you could just feel the tension brewing and brewing and brewing. And there's all these different kind of competing agendas at play in this little ceremony. And so bloodshed was inevitable, most likely. But we see Jason Lannister and his twin showing up, and he acts like a boob, as usual. And one of the best moments is when the Velaryons show up. Their entire family makes this incredible entrance. But that's not the last entrance that's made. Daemon strolls in late, and the very last person to arrive is Alicent. And she comes in wearing a bright green dress, and we learn from like the whispering and the kind of the gossiping going on in the room, that is the Hightower color when they call their banners to war. And the green's incredibly significant because one of the major events of the book that kind of got folded in with this ceremony was this giant tournament where all the knights who were loyal to Rhaenyra and all the knights who were loyal to Alicent just absolutely duke it out in a major way. And at this tournament, Rhaenyra is wearing the red and black of House Targaryen, and Alicent's wearing the greens. And from that point on, people who are loyal to Rhaenyra are referred to as the blacks, and people who are loyal to Alicent are referred to as the greens. This is obviously one of the opening hostile gestures between these two ladies before all-out warfare. But Gerald Royce confronts Daemon about the death of his wife, and then Daemon adds insult to injury and says that he intends to claim Runestone as his inheritance because he and his wife never had any kids, but that's not where the blood gets shed. Daemon's got other things on his mind, and there was an interesting moment where we see that Laena is kind of giving Daemon the big eye, and they have a little dance, and then Daemon confronts Rhaenyra, speaking in their old family tongue about what she truly wants. And what was great was how Viserys is trying to watch and trying to see what's happening, but we get these great close-ups where he's kind of agonizing over what might happen next because he can't see what's happening, and then we suddenly start hearing these screams and we start hearing sounds of violence because, as it turns out, Sir Criston Cole and Joffrey are throwing down, and Joffrey was playing a very dangerous game during the ceremony, basically almost kind of gloating and taunting to Sir Criston Cole about how I know your secret, now you know mine, and we're all just going to kind of carry on our behind-the-scenes affairs, and no one will ever be the wiser. But Sir Criston Cole obviously is wrestling with a lot of demons, but as he's throwing down with Joffrey, all hell breaks loose. And there's this great moment where Lionel Strong gives a little nod to his son, Breakbones, and Breakbones just starts chucking people aside, picks up Rhaenyra, and drags her out of there. And in the book, Breakbones is renowned as the strongest man in the Seven Kingdoms, and so expect to see a lot more of Breakbones moving forward. But in the chaos of all this violence, nobody notices that Viserys is really suffering, bleeding heavily from the nose. But when the dust finally settles from this epic scrap, we see that Joffrey's face is basically totally gone. His eyes been gouged out. I mean, he's a fucking mess. And Laenor is crushed. He's destroyed. And they all very wisely decide, you know what? Maybe this 7 days of feasting and tournaments that we were looking forward to, maybe let's just skip ahead to the wedding. So while I would have loved to have seen the tournament, I feel like the show gave us a great tournament in the very first episode, and there probably wasn't room in the budget for a second tournament. And there was this great shot at the wedding of Viserys collapsing once again as a rat is drinking blood off the floor. But that wasn't the last bit of drama. We see Cole on the verge of committing suicide out of shame, but we see that Alicent stays his hand and she recruits him over to her side. So, as always, the battle lines continue to be drawn. So what got me excited about the teaser for the next episode, Viserys is just looking rough and gruesome and almost like unintentionally hilarious. His health is so bad. But there were a lot of kids on the scene, and we see Alicent complaining about how Rhaenyra's children, their color of their hair is an issue. And I won't elaborate anymore, but people who know the material will know what she is referring to. Let's just say that the matter of succession is already very cloudy. It's going to get increasingly cloudy as we move forward, and I just can't fucking wait for everybody to get a chance to sink their teeth into all the crazy shit that is coming our way. And it's just going to build and build and build, and by the end of this season, I'll let me know if I'm going to be able to take it. Like, I'm already like giddy and like fidgeting my seat and jumping around while watching the episodes because I'm so excited. By the end of the season, I'm just going to be losing my goddamn mind. And just to give you an idea of how much I like this show, whenever I'm through with my official review and recap after each episode, I immediately go back and watch the episode for a second time. What's really incredible to me is how we've had 5 very solid episodes and some episodes that are dramatically better. And that's pretty rare. I mean, even the best shows out there have their peaks and valleys, but the consistency of storytelling excellence on this show and the way they're being very faithful to the book while at the same time carving their own path, creating their own scenes, doing their own fresh spins on things. And yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways this is kind of a masterclass on how to make a show that appeals to general fans or casual fans who don't give a damn about reading these books, people who are really into Game of Thrones, but also at the same time making the diehards really happy. And I'm sure making George R.R. Martin very happy in the process. They're just nailing it every step of the way. And so, yeah, I just could not be more excited for what's coming our way over the next 5 episodes. But if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. But I can't thank you enough for listening to my rant about one of my favorite shows. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.